Hey guys, John V here from PhoneArena. Right now you're watching our video comparison between the Nokia Lumia 928 and the Apple iPhone 5. Now if you're from Verizon, you know that the 928 just recently landed, sporting that really impressive price point of $100 with a 2-year contract versus the $200 cost of the iPhone 5. So if you're wondering which one to go with, we've got your comparison right here. Neither handset has an original design since they follow in the footsteps of their predecessors, but when it comes to the infield of the hand, we have to give the slight advantage to the iPhone 5 just because of the overall size. It helps. Neither one's real ergonomic just because they both have flat sides and sharp corners, but seeing that the iPhone 5 is thinner and lighter, it's just easier to hold in the hand. As far as build quality, we got to give it to both handsets. Very solid and sturdy, but you kind of get that premium element with the iPhone 5's aluminum back casing versus the polycarbonate plastic casing of the Lumia 928, which is glossy and a little bit more slippery. We'll be the first to admit that both handsets have some really superb looking displays, and all comes down to personal preference as to which one you think looks better. Now with the Lumia 928, it's a 4.5-inch PureMotion HD Plus display. Resolution stands at 1280 by 768 and a pixel density of 332 pixels per inch. Now the thing that we like about it is just that it has those vibrant saturated color reproduction, which gives it that wow factor, and the display is also sensitive, so even if you're wearing gloves, you'll be able to actually interact with the display, whereas with the iPhone 5, you won't be able to do that. Now the iPhone 5, the advantage to it is that it has a smaller display. Some people might like that 4-inch Retina display. The resolution is 1136 by 640. And honestly, when it comes to pure details, even though on paper the Lumia 928 might have the advantage, it's not going to make a difference when it comes to real-world usage. They're both very detailed. They're sharp. We're able to make out the same text, fine text in the web browser from the same distance away. But with the iPhone 5, you do get the more realistic color tones and the slightly better outdoor visibility just because it has a slightly higher brightness output. Even though the Lumia 928 utilizes capacitor buttons below its displays, we didn't have any issues actually hitting them. They're spaced far away from one another to reduce any accidental presses. And of course with the iPhone 5s, it has that iconic home button, which is recessed, the only physical button right below the display. When it comes to physical buttons, we'll hand it to the iPhone 5 just because its buttons, both the volume control and even the dedicated power button, are a little bit more distinguishable than the Lumia 928 set, and they're also more responsive. As for some of the other ports along both handset sides, you have pretty much the same set. 3.5mm headset jacks, you have noise cancellation microphones, standard mics, but when it comes to charging data connectivity, you get the more favorable micro USB port on the Lumia 928 in contrast to the iPhone 5's proprietary Lightning port. As we've seen previously in our reviews of both handsets, these two take some really sharp-looking photos with their cameras. On the Lumia 928, it's an 8.7 megapixel PureView camera, which features a Carl Zeiss optics. You have an f2.0 lens in there, optical image stabilization, and features also the better xenon flash, which is more favorable. On the iPhone 5, you have an 8 megapixel camera with an f2.4 lens. You have an LED flash. Both have the ability to shoot 1080p videos, and when we flip them over, we see their front-facing cameras. So they're both equal in size at 1.2 megapixels, and they both can also shoot 720p. Adding to its overall feature set, it's worth noting that with the Lumia 928, it features NFC and wireless charging, which is something that the iPhone 5 lacks. Now, I won't get into too much detail about the experience of either handset just because we've checked them out in the past and other comparisons. It just boils down to personal preference, honestly. Now, with the iPhone 5 and its iOS experience, we'll hand it to it for being the easier UI to understand. It's more simplistic and straightforward. You kind of tell with also the grid-like panel. There's not as much personalization, unfortunately. The other good thing about it is that you just have a deeper selection of apps with its ecosystem. And finally, you also have the advantage of using Siri. It's a personal digital voice assistant service, which is pretty beneficial in many ways. Now with the Lumia 928, it does have a little bit more personalization with its Windows Phone 8 experience, and with the start screen, it just has that more animated look, which definitely stands out, and that's partly due to the dynamic live tiles of the start screen. On top of that, it utilizes the modern UI throughout pretty much all the hubs, and just has a very visually pleasing look to the entire experience. Even though they're regarded highly in the smartphone market, these two handsets aren't packing the most intensive hardware under the hood. In fact, they're only dual-core processors as opposed to the quad-cores that we see on some other high-end smartphones out there. On the Lumia 928, it's a 1.5 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 Plus processor with 1 GB of RAM versus the 1.3 GHz Apple A6 processor with 1 GB of RAM on the iPhone 5. And you could tell just by moving around the home screen here, they pretty much execute in a very similar manner. Other basic tasks, whether it be opening up applications, pinch zooming in the web browser, even more intensive stuff such as playing games, they're both on the same level to one another. Neither actually slowdowns or exhibits that much lag, so we're pretty much satisfied with the performance between the two. Likewise, we could say the same thing about the web browsing experience just because they feature 4G LTE connectivity and navigational controls are buttery smooth. You could tell with pinch gestures, kinetic scrolling, the same exact performance on both handsets, and honestly, they're both more than gratifying. Typing isn't an issue with either handset as well, just because, again, you get that same responsive feel with their operation. But with the Lumia 928, you're just going to have a slightly more spacious layout just because of the larger screen. Beyond that, they both offer pretty excellent autocorrect features, so even if you make a mistake on the fly, it automatically corrects itself. If you love listening to music, you'll surely appreciate the music players on both handsets. With the iPhone 5, you have CoverFlow, which in this day and age is still one appealing looking UI. With the Lumia 928, it has that modern UI you could see throughout all the other applications. As far as the audio quality of both speakers, we'll go with the Nokia Lumia 28. Its speaker just seems to be stronger than the iPhone 5, just by a little bit. Tend to just have a little bit of crackle, but they're both more than audible in the middle setting. Obviously, playing high-definition videos isn't a problem here on both handsets. You could tell with their playback, very smooth and instantaneous, no lag or slowdown whatsoever, but we'll have to hand it to the Lumia 928 just for being the more ideal between the two, just because of the larger display and with its oversaturated color reproduction, it really gives it that nice wow factor. Also, with the 928, you get more video codec support out of the box with less conversion needed. So here we are finally comparing the picture quality produced by the respective cameras. The 8 megapixel with f2.4 lens in the iPhone 5 versus the 8.7 megapixel pure view camera with an f2.0 lens in the Lumia 928. Now it's really hard to say which one's the better between the two just because they've produced some fantastic looking outdoor scenery shots, some macro shots, even portrait. If we zoom in here, it's really hard to tell the difference between which one produces more detail. They're both very sharp, some nice looking colors. But the thing that we noticed just with the Lumia 920 just has a harder time, especially under artificial lighting, to get the correct white balance. Sometimes it's off, so you get a little bit more of a purplish tinge to its color reproduction, but it does excel better in lower lighting conditions, and I'll quickly show you here. Overall, the shots are brighter with the Lumia 928's camera. At the same time too, it just draws out more of the details that are sometimes lost, whereas with the iPhone 5s, the details tend to look a little bit more speckled than anything else. And finally, it's just the xenon flash that shows its strength over the LED flash of the iPhone 5. It just seems like the color reproduction has a little bit more vibrancy in the shots taken with the Lumia 928, whereas with the iPhone 5, it tends to be a little bit more flat. However, when it comes to 1080p video recording quality, we'll give the advantage to the iPhone 5 just because the detail seems to be a lot better with it versus the Lumia 920. 920 has a really nice optical image stabilization, so it's not as shaky, but the details are a little bit softer and its exposure seems to be a lot more sensitive than the iPhone 5, which is gradual. And we do notice just a little bit of artifacting going on too when we're panning very quickly with the Lumia 928. Call quality is surprisingly even with the two just because we're able to converse without any issues whatsoever, but we'll hand it to the Lumia 928 for having the stronger volume output with both its earpiece and speakerphone. However, they both offer killer noise cancellation features just because in windy environments, they drown that out, so the only thing that our callers hear is our voice. As a whole, there's an extravagant difference in terms of battery life with these two smartphones. If you're on 3G connectivity, you're going to get easily a solid day of normal usage out of the two. But of course, if you're on 4G LTE, just expect to charge them constantly. Yet again, it just boils down to personal preference. You're not going to go wrong choosing either handset. Just know that with the iPhone 5 here on Verizon, you're going to be paying $200 for the base 16GB model. In contrast, the Nokia Lumia 928 has a very competitive price point out of the gate at $100 for the 2-year contract. So you get more bang for the buck in terms of storage. But beyond that, they're both very equal in many aspects with their performance, their camera quality, the experience, very similar. So just a matter of personal preference. So if you want to learn more about either handset, guys, you could check out our website, PhoneArena.com. It's John V. Thanks for watching.